Our story begins not with the clash of swords or the roar of magic, but with light itself. Light that flows through a crystal, ancient and eternal, pulsing with power that transcends mortal understanding. This is the crystal of Lucis, heart of a kingdom, source of a magical wall that has protected a single city for generations, while the rest of the world fell into shadow. In the world of Eos, where gods walk among mortals and darkness threatens to consume everything, where prophecy and fate intertwine with the choices of ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances, a young prince prepares for a journey that will take him from boyhood to kingship, from companionship to solitude, and ultimately from life into legend. The planet Eos is dying, though most who walk its surface remain blissfully unaware of how far the rot has spread. For decades, the star scourge has been spreading across the land, a parasitic plague that lengthens nights and shortens days, that transforms living creatures into demons when darkness falls, mindless monsters driven by hunger and malice. The affliction creeps across continents like poison through veins, invisible during daylight hours, but manifesting with terrifying clarity once the sun dips below the horizon. What began as isolated incidents in remote regions has metastasized into a planetary crisis, with some areas experiencing nights that stretch for days, where survivors huddle behind hastily erected barriers and pray for dawn that comes later with each passing week. Two great powers dominate this dying world, locked in a conflict that has defined the modern age. The kingdom of Lucis stands defiant in the south, a realm blessed by the crystal's power and protected by the magic of its royal bloodline. The Lucian kings possess abilities that set them apart from ordinary mortals, wielding weapons forged from their very essence, conjuring protective barriers, and channeling the crystal's light to banish darkness. For generations, the wall stood as the kingdom's ultimate defense, a magical barrier sustained by the king's own life force that encircled the crown city of Insomnia, rendering it impregnable to outside attack while the rest of Lucis fell under imperial occupation. To the north sprawls the empire of Niflheim, a militaristic superpower that abandoned magic in favor of technology, building an arsenal of magitech weapons powered by demons bound into machinery. Where Lucis draws strength from ancient divine covenant, Niflheim found power through industrial innovation and ruthless pragmatism. Their magitech troopers march in perfect formation. Their airships darken the skies. Their scientists push the boundaries of what humanity can achieve when moral constraints are discarded in pursuit of advancement. The Empire has spent decades conquering territories, absorbing kingdoms and nations into its expanding dominion, until only Insomnia remained free behind its magical walls. Between these powers lies a third force, not a nation but a calling. The Oracle serves as humanity's intercessor with the divine, a healer blessed with powers to commune with the Six, the gods who shaped Eos in ages past. The Oracle travels where she is needed, tending to the Star Scourge's victims, performing rites that temporarily halt the plague's advance, serving as humanity's last connection to the divine in an age when gods have grown distant and silent. The current Oracle is Lunafreya Nox Fleuret, a young woman of grace and determination who carries her sacred duty with quiet strength, knowing that her service demands everything and promises only sacrifice. The story properly begins in the crown city of Insomnia, a metropolis of gleaming towers and ancient architecture where magic and modernity coexist in uneasy harmony. Here, in the citadel that rises above all other structures, King Regis Lucis Calum, the 113th, sits upon his throne, bearing the weight of responsibility that has aged him beyond his years. Maintaining the wall drains his life force day by day, manifesting as chronic pain, graying hair, and a weariness that settles into his bones like frost. He knows he is dying, knows that his time grows short, and makes preparations for succession that will come sooner than anyone outside the inner circle suspects. His son and heir is Noctis Lucis Calum. 20 years old, dark-haired and lean, possessing his father's ability to manifest weapons from thin air, but lacking the confidence and gravitas expected of a future king. Noctis seems almost deliberately ordinary, uncomfortable with formality, preferring fishing and video games to statecraft, slouching through royal duties with visible reluctance. Yet beneath the casual exterior lies genuine capability, skills honed through years of training, even if he rarely chooses to display them. He loves his father deeply while struggling with the enormous shadow cast by Regis's reputation and the destiny that awaits him, the prophecy that hangs over his life like a sword suspended by fraying thread. The prophecy speaks of the true king, the chosen of the crystal, who will banish darkness from the world and restore the light. Every Lucian monarch hopes their lineage will produce this savior, but the signs have never aligned until now, until Noctis, whose birth coincided with celestial events that religious scholars interpreted as prophetic fulfillment. The weight of messianic expectation presses down on shoulders too young to bear it comfortably, and Noctis copes through studied nonchalance, pretending the destiny does not exist in hopes it might go away. He does not journey alone, has never been alone, surrounded since childhood by companions who have become brothers in all but blood. These are the people who know him not as prince or prophesied king, but simply as Noct, the friend who shares their interests and their burdens. Ignis, Scientia, serves as advisor and strategist, a young man of impeccable composure whose refined manners and intellectual precision mask deep wells of loyalty and concern. He has devoted his life to preparing Noctis for kingship, studying everything from political theory to culinary arts, believing that a king must understand all aspects of his kingdom, from the highest matters of state to the simple pleasures that make life worth living. Gladiolus Amicitia is the shield, scion of a family that has protected Lucian kings for generations, massive and powerful with tribal tattoos marking his arms and a greatsword nearly as tall as he is. He embodies the warrior ethos, believing that strength and duty are inseparable, that to protect means to be willing to sacrifice everything, including life itself. Gladio pushes Noctis to be stronger, challenges him when he seems to shirk responsibility, serves as both guardian and older brother who refuses to let affection soften necessary criticism. Prompto Argentum completes the group, the only one born outside nobility, a cheerful young man with blonde hair and an endless enthusiasm for photography that manifests as constantly snapping pictures of their adventures. He brings lightness to balance the weight of destiny and duty, cracks jokes when tension grows too thick, reminds them all that they are young men on a road trip and not just pieces moving across a strategic board. His friendship with Noctis began in school, the outsider and the prince finding connection through shared interest and genuine affection, rather than political calculation. These four will travel together through everything that follows, their bond tested by tragedy and revelation, strained by disagreement and loss, but never quite breaking. They are the heart of this story, their friendship the light that persists when all other lights have failed. The journey begins with a wedding, or rather, the preparation for one. Diplomatic channels between Lucis and Niflheim have finally produced a treaty, an armistice that promises to end decades of conflict in exchange for significant territorial concessions from Lucis. The treaty will be sealed through marriage between Noctis and Lunafreya, the Oracle who happens to be the Princess of Tenebrae, a nation conquered by Niflheim years ago. The arrangement is political calculation dressed in romantic language. Two young people who knew each other as children, now being used as chess pieces in games played by their elders. Yet beneath the political maneuvering lies genuine emotion. Noctis and Lunafreya harbor real affection for each other, memories of childhood friendship that have ripened into something deeper despite years of separation and communication only through letters and dreams. She represents home and safety, memories of happier times before duty and destiny consumed their lives. He represents hope and possibility, the promise that her sacrifices serve meaningful purpose in protecting someone who matters rather than merely fulfilling abstract obligation. The plan requires Noctis to travel from Insomnia to Alticia, a city-state of canals and classical architecture in neutral territory where the wedding will take place. Rather than traveling by royal procession or military convoy, which might provoke imperial aggression, Noctis and his companions will journey by car. Just 4 friends on a road trip, keeping low profile while supposedly enjoying the prince's final days of freedom before assuming the responsibilities of marriage and eventual kingship. King Regis does not share his subjects' optimism about the treaty. He reads the political situation with the clarity of someone who has spent decades navigating treachery and betrayal, recognizes that Niflheim's sudden willingness to negotiate suggests ulterior motives rather than genuine peace. The Empire has never surrendered advantage without extracting greater concessions elsewhere, has never honored agreements that did not serve their strategic interests. Something is wrong, but the opportunity for peace, however slim, cannot be ignored. When the alternative is continued war that Lucis cannot win. The morning of departure arrives with golden sunlight streaming through Insomnia's towers, the city alive with activity as citizens celebrate the coming peace. The regalia, Regis's personal automobile, has been prepared for the journey, a luxurious convertible black car that represents elegance from a bygone era, impractical for the modern world, but perfect for this moment where style matters as much as substance. The 4 friends gather at the city's edge, where the wall's shimmering barrier marks the boundary between protected sanctuary and the wider world beyond. Regis arrives to see them off, and the farewell between father and son carries weight beyond the moment. The king knows what awaits in Insomnia once Noctis leaves, understands that this may be their final meeting, and struggles to communicate everything he feels while maintaining the composure expected of his station. He speaks of duty and destiny, reminds Noctis of his responsibilities, but beneath the formal language runs a current of love and regret, all the things a father wishes he had said to his son when time seemed limitless. "Walk tall, my son." The words echo in Noctis's mind as the regalia passes through the wall and onto the open highway, Insomnia shrinking behind them until it becomes just another cluster of towers on the horizon. The 4 friends settle into the journey's rhythm, Ignis driving with careful precision, Gladio occupying the passenger seat with his massive frame, Noctis and Prompto in back, watching the landscape roll past. The world beyond Insomnia is beautiful and wild. Open plains dotted with rock formations that rise like ancient monuments, roads cutting through wilderness where civilization's grip remains tenuous at best. They stop at Hammerhead, an outpost garage operated by Tid Sophia, a gruff mechanic whose decades of experience show in every weathered line of his face and his granddaughter Cindy, whose mechanical expertise and friendly demeanor make her immediately likable despite Prompto's obvious and somewhat embarrassing attraction. The regalia requires tuning after years of sitting in royal storage, and Sid agrees to perform the work in exchange for assistance with various tasks around the outpost. These small errands, hunting local creatures for bounties, clearing blocked roads, and gathering materials, introduce the young men to life outside Insomnia's protective walls, to the reality of a world where survival requires constant vigilance and cooperation. The hunting is Noctis's first real taste of combat outside controlled training environments, fighting creatures that actually want to kill him, rather than instructors pulling their strikes. He discovers that summoning weapons from thin air, the royal armature power inherited through his bloodline, provides significant advantage in battle. Swords materialize in his hands, shifting between forms as combat demands, disappearing and reappearing as thought directs them. He can throw weapons and teleport to their location, phasing through space in bursts of crystalline light, closing distances and creating angles of attack impossible for normal fighters. But power alone proves insufficient without teamwork. His companions each bring their own capabilities. Gladio's raw strength breaking through enemy defenses, Ignis's tactical precision exploiting weaknesses, Prompto's firearms providing range support and covering fire. They learn to coordinate, to cover each other's vulnerabilities, to combine their abilities into something greater than simple addition of individual strengths. The bonds formed in childhood are being tested and tempered through shared danger, transforming friendship into brotherhood forged in combat. The radio brings news from Insomnia, reports that initially seem routine but gradually take on sinister tone. Treaty signing is proceeding as scheduled, diplomatic ceremonies unfolding with appropriate pomp and circumstance, imperial representatives arriving in force to formalize the peace accord. Then the transmissions become confused, fragmented, reports of explosions and combat, of imperial forces emerging from diplomatic convoys with weapons drawn, of the wall collapsing and Magitech troopers flooding into the city. The crown city is under attack. The treaty, an elaborate deception to lower defenses and deliver Niflheim's military directly into Insomnia's heart. The group watches in horror as news broadcasts show footage of the invasion, imperial airships bombarding the citadel, Magitech armor marching through streets where citizens fled in panic. The commentators speak in shocked tones about the scale of the betrayal, about how thoroughly Niflheim has violated every diplomatic protocol and common decency. Reports filter in about the Lucian Council being slaughtered in the treaty signing chamber, about defensive forces being overwhelmed by enemies who materialized within their own walls, about fires consuming entire districts as resistance crumbles before imperial might. Then comes the announcement that stops Noctis's heart. King Regis Lucis Calum, the 113th, is dead, killed during the invasion alongside Prince Noctis and Lady Lunafreya, who were reportedly in the city for the treaty signing. The Empire announces this to the world, declares all three dead, proclaims the royal line extinguished and Lucis effectively leaderless. The broadcast shows footage that seems to confirm the claims, though careful eyes might notice inconsistencies, might question whether the bodies shown are actually who they claim. Noctis cannot process the information, his mind rejecting what his ears hear. His father cannot be dead, the man who seemed eternal despite his frailties, whose presence defined Noctis's entire world. And Lunafreya, who was supposed to be safely in Tenebrae, how could she have been in Insomnia? The claims make no sense even as their emotional impact destroys his ability to think clearly. Grief and shock war with confusion and denial, leaving him paralyzed while his companions struggle with their own reactions to news that reshapes everything. Gladio's response is immediate and visceral, anger replacing shock, demanding they return to Insomnia immediately to fight whoever remains, to reclaim what was stolen. Ignis counsels caution, points out that rushing into a city occupied by imperial forces would achieve nothing beyond adding their corpses to the death toll, that they must gather intelligence and assess the situation before committing to action. Prompto simply tries to be present for his friend, offering comfort through proximity when words fail to address grief beyond language. They learn more as information trickles in through less controlled channels, through eyewitness accounts that escape Niflheim's information management and paint a clearer picture of what actually happened. The Imperial Chancellor Ardin Izunia orchestrated the invasion personally, appearing throughout the citadel during the assault, as if mocking the defenders' attempts to contain him. King Regis died fighting, holding off Imperial forces long enough for others to escape, his final act one of sacrifice rather than surrender. The crystal itself was seized, loaded onto Imperial transports and taken to Niflheim's capital, the heart of Lucis's power, now in enemy hands. But Noctis lives obviously, and reports of his death are propaganda rather than fact. Lunafreya also survives, having escaped Insomnia before the invasion, or perhaps never being there to begin with, depending on which accounts prove accurate. The Empire's false claims serve strategic purpose, declaring the Lucian royal line extinct to demoralize resistance and legitimize their conquest of Insomnia. If the heir lives, but the world believes him dead, he becomes free to move without Imperial forces hunting him, though he also cannot rally supporters or claim his rightful throne without revealing himself. Marshal Corleonis finds them at Hammerhead, one of the few surviving members of Regis's inner circle, a legendary warrior whose reputation precedes him like thunder before lightning. He brings confirmation of the worst news and worse news besides, explaining the full scope of the disaster and the precarious position in which Noctis now finds himself. The prince is king now, whether he feels ready or not, though a king without kingdom, without resources, without anything except the title and the few loyal souls who still draw breath. Kor speaks of prophecy and duty, reminds Noctis that his father died to buy him time to fulfill his destiny, that the star scourge continues to spread, and the crystal was not seized by chance, but taken for purposes that likely involve preventing the prophecy's fulfillment. The Empire knows about the true king, fears what he represents, and will do everything possible to eliminate him before he can access the power necessary to banish the darkness. Survival alone is not enough. Noctis must actively pursue his destiny if he wishes to honor his father's sacrifice and save a world sliding toward eternal night. The path forward requires gathering power, specifically the power of the old Lucian kings, who ruled before the wall's creation, when the kingdom encompassed all the lands now lost to imperial conquest. These monarchs forged weapons from their own souls, royal arms that contain fragments of their wielder's strength and can be claimed by worthy successors. Tombs scattered across Lucis and beyond hold these weapons, waiting for the rightful king to reclaim them and inherit the power they represent. With enough royal arms, with sufficient connection to the accumulated strength of his ancestors, Noctis might become powerful enough to challenge the Empire and fulfill his prophesied role. Additionally, he must seek the blessing of the Six, the Astrals who shaped Eos in ages past and whose divine power can be channeled by those who earn their favor. These gods exist in state between presence and absence, sleeping or withdrawing from mortal affairs, but capable of being roused to action when proper rituals are performed. The oracle traditionally serves as intermediary, conducting rites that allow mortals to commune with the divine, and Lunafreya apparently intends to fulfill this duty on Noctis's behalf, traveling to sacred sites where the Astrals can be contacted and preparing the way for him to receive their blessings. So begins the true journey, not the simple road trip to a wedding that was supposed to define their immediate future, but an odyssey across Eos in pursuit of power, sufficient to reclaim what was stolen and fulfill destiny that suddenly feels far more real and immediate. The regalia becomes their mobile headquarters, carrying them from tomb to tomb, from encounter to encounter, gradually transforming four friends on an adventure into something resembling the hero's prophecy demands. The first royal arm lies in a cave system not far from Hammerhead, the Tomb of the Wise, where one of the ancient kings rests in state surrounded by crystalline formations that glow with residual magic. The tomb feels sacred and somehow wrong simultaneously, a place where death has been preserved rather than allowed its natural rest, where royal souls linger bound to weapons forged from their essence. Noctis approaches the sarcophagus, reaches out to claim the weapon, and the moment his hand closes around its hilt, something terrible happens. The dead king's memories flood into him, not coherent narrative but emotional impressions and fragmented images, the weight of responsibility and the pain of sacrifice that defined that ancient monarch's reign. Noctis experiences death, the moment when life left that body and essence poured into the weapon, preserving power at the cost of everything that made existence worth living. The pain is excruciating, dropping Noctis to his knees, and when it finally passes, he understands that claiming the royal arms means inheriting not just strength but suffering, that every weapon comes with psychic scars of those who forge them. This will happen repeatedly, each royal arm adding to the burden, each ancient king sharing their pain along with their power. The accumulation weighs on Noctis in ways his companions cannot fully understand, draining him emotionally even as it enhances his combat capabilities. He begins to comprehend what kingship truly costs, why his father aged so rapidly, why the weight of the crown is not metaphor but literal truth for those who bear it. Their travels take them through regions of extraordinary beauty and danger. They hunt massive creatures for bounties posted by locals struggling to keep trade routes clear, fight demons that emerge from the earth once darkness falls, camp beneath stars that seem impossibly bright away from Insomnia's light pollution. The camping becomes ritual. Ignis preparing elaborate meals from ingredients they gather or purchase. The four of them sitting around firelight, sharing conversation and silence in equal measure, finding comfort in routine when so much else remains uncertain. Prompto documents everything through his camera, capturing moments that might otherwise be forgotten in the chaos of their quest. His photographs become record of their journey, proof that amid tragedy and loss, they also found beauty and joy. That friendship persisted even when the world seemed determined to crush all light beneath darkness. He shows them the images each evening, lets them see themselves through his eyes, reminds them why they fight when purpose becomes obscured by exhaustion. They receive updates about Lunafreya through channels that remain frustratingly vague. She moves ahead of them, traveling to locations where the Astrals can be contacted, performing rites that will allow Noctis to receive divine blessings when he arrives. The Oracle's pilgrimage is dangerous, taking her into imperial territory where she is wanted for her symbolic importance and her power to treat the Star Scourge. Niflheim cannot simply kill her. Her death would create a martyr, and turn global opinion even further against the Empire. But they harass and impede her progress at every opportunity. She sends messages through intermediaries, through contacts in the underground resistance that still operates within occupied territories. Brief communications that express confidence in Noctis's ability to fulfill his destiny and love that transcends their separation. The messages sustain him through difficult moments, remind him that he fights not just for abstract duty, but for specific person whose faith never wavers, even when his own threatens to collapse. The disk of Corthus rises from the landscape like a god's footprint, a massive crater filled with stone ruins and residual divine energy. This was the site of an ancient battle where the astral titan fought against forces that history has forgotten, where divine power scarred the land so deeply that the wound persists millennia later. The ruins are hot enough to shimmer the air, fragments of Titan's stone bodies scattered across the crater like fallen columns from some impossible temple. Here they encounter Arden Izunia for the first time since Insomnia's fall, the Imperial Chancellor appearing seemingly from nowhere with his characteristic smirk and casual manner that masks profound danger. He dresses in Baroque fashion, layers of dark clothing that seem deliberately designed to draw attention. His burgundy hair styled in a way that suggests nobility or perhaps mockery of noble affectation. Everything about him feels wrong, artificial in ways that set survival instincts screaming warnings. Arden claims to want to help, offers information about accessing Titan's resting place, speaks with playful ambiguity that makes his true intentions impossible to determine. He could be genuinely assisting their quest or manipulating them towards some trap. Could be friend or enemy or something outside those binary categories entirely. His eyes carry knowledge that he dangles like bait, suggesting he understands far more about their situation than they do, that he moves pieces on a game board they cannot even see. Against better judgment and over Ignis's strenuous objections, they accept Arden's assistance, following his directions into the deepest parts of the crater where divine power concentrates. The ruins become more elaborate the further they descend, architecture that predates human civilization, covering walls with imagery depicting ancient conflicts and divine figures. The story told in stone speaks of wars between gods, of cataclysms that reshaped continents, of powers so vast that mortal comprehension fails before them. At the crater's heart, Titan waits in stone slumber, a god so massive that his body is the landscape itself, his form stretching hundreds of feet from head to base, every feature carved from living rock. The Archean, as Titan is formally titled, serves as living foundation, literally holding up a portion of the planet through strength that never falters. To wake him, to request his blessing, requires performing rites that only the Oracle can conduct. Lunafreya arrives ahead of them, having traveled through danger and imperial obstruction to reach this sacred site at the appointed time. Her reunion with Noctis is brief, but emotionally overwhelming. Years of separation compressed into a few precious moments before duty reasserts itself. She looks exhausted, the physical toll of her pilgrimage visible in her expression, despite her determination to conceal any weakness. The Oracle's power demands sacrifice, drains her life force with every use, aging her prematurely just as maintaining the wall-aged Regis. She begins the ritual, speaking in languages dead for centuries, calling Titan from his slumber with words that resonate with divine authority. The ground trembles as the Archean wakes, stone limbs stirring for the first time in ages, rubble sliding from his shoulders as he rises to his full, impossible height. His face turns toward them, and in that moment they stand before a god's full attention, feeling judgment that weighs their worthiness to receive blessing and power. Titan does not simply grant his blessing, but tests those who seek it, demands proof that Noctis possesses the strength to bear divine power and the will to use it properly. The trial manifests as combat, though fighting a god proves nearly meaningless when simple gesture could obliterate them all. What Titan actually tests is perseverance, the ability to continue despite overwhelming opposition, to stand and keep standing when logic dictates surrender. Noctis and his companions fight with everything they possess, targeting the crystalline weak points that manifest on Titan's body, dodging attacks that crater the ground and create shockwaves that throw them like leaves in hurricane winds. The battle feels impossible, their attacks barely scratching Godstone flesh, their resources depleting while Titan seems utterly inexhaustible. But they persist, supporting each other when strength fails, creating openings through coordinated effort that individual action could never achieve. Finally, when they have proven themselves through sheer refusal to quit, Titan's assault ceases. The Archean extends his hand in gesture that is simultaneously blessing and surrender, acknowledging Noctis as worthy of the power he seeks. Divine energy flows from god to prince, forging covenant that allows Noctis to call upon Titan's strength in moments of extreme need, to summon the Archean into battle as temporary ally when facing threats that exceed mortal capacity to overcome. The blessing's weight is tremendous, another burden added to those Noctis already carries. He can feel Titan's presence now, residing somewhere in his consciousness, vast and patient, and fundamentally alien to human experience. The god sleeps again, but remains accessible, waiting for the call that will pull him from slumber into the waking world. Imperial forces arrive as Titan withdraws, having tracked Lunafreya to the crater and now moving to capture or kill her before she can complete her pilgrimage. Magitech troopers deploy from airships that darken the sky, their weapons systems targeting the Oracle with lethal intent that diplomatic niceties no longer restrain. The Empire has apparently decided that the risk of martyrdom is acceptable compared to the danger of allowing her to continue forging covenants between Noctis and the remaining Astrals. Arden appears again during the evacuation, his assistance continuing in ways that feel simultaneously helpful and suspicious. He provides escape routes, delays Imperial forces through means he does not explain, acts as if their survival serves his interest despite his allegiance to the Empire that seeks their destruction. The contradictions pile up without resolution, creating portrait of a man whose motivations remain fundamentally unknowable. Lunafreya escapes separately, returning to her pilgrimage while Noctis and his companions continue their own journey, collecting royal arms and building strength. They want to stay together, to travel as a group, but practicality dictates separation. The Oracle's path takes her into regions where the prince's presence would draw overwhelming imperial response, where her relative anonymity and sacred status provide protection that would evaporate if she traveled with Lucis's most wanted fugitive. The parting is painful, neither knowing when or if they will meet again, aware that every day brings Luna closer to exhaustion as her pilgrimage drains her life force. She promises to complete the rites, to forge covenants with all the Astrals, giving Noctis every possible advantage for the confrontations that await him. He promises to become strong enough to protect her once they reunite, to be worthy of her sacrifice and faith. The promises feel hollow in the face of forces beyond their control, but they make them anyway, because hope requires something to hold on to, even when reason suggests letting go. The journey continues through Duske and Clane, regions of forests and industrial areas where Lucian culture persists despite imperial occupation. They encounter remnants of resistance, pockets of fighters who refuse to accept Niflheim's conquest and wage guerrilla campaigns from hiding. These rebels provide intelligence and assistance, help the prince evade imperial patrols, find hope in his survival and what it represents for eventual liberation. They also encounter the deepening signs of the Star Scourge's advance. Nights grow longer across all regions, demons become more numerous and aggressive. Civilians huddle in settlements ringed with protective lights that barely hold back the darkness. The plague manifests not just in demon attacks, but in the land itself. Vegetation withering, water sources becoming tainted, the very essence of life being drained away. Entire regions are being consumed, transformed into wastelands where nothing survives except creatures of darkness. At Vesperpool, an ancient marshland region steeped in sacred history, they seek audience with Ramu the Fulgarian, the Astral, who commands lightning and storm. The old god proves more directly communicative than Titan, appearing as a vision of an elderly man robed in purple who speaks in riddles and prophecies. He tests Noctis not through combat, but through demonstrations of character, through choices that reveal the prince's values and priorities when personal desires conflict with greater good. Ramu's blessing comes with warnings, speaking of trials ahead that will test not just strength, but identity itself, that will force Noctis to confront truths about his nature and destiny that have been kept hidden for his own protection. The god knows more than he reveals, sees futures that mortals cannot perceive, and his cryptic statements plant seeds of unease that will grow as the journey progresses. The covenant with Ramu grants Noctis the ability to summon lightning from clear skies, to call down judgment that annihilates enemies who would otherwise overwhelm through sheer numbers. The power is intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure, commanding forces that humans were never meant to wield, playing with energies that could as easily destroy the user as the target. Each astral blessing makes Noctis more than human, while also making him less, trading pieces of mortal perspective for divine power that slowly transforms him into vessel for forces beyond his comprehension. They learn that Lunafreya proceeds toward Altisia, the city-state of canals where the wedding was supposed to take place, now the location where she will attempt to forge covenant with Leviathan. The Tide Mother is the most aggressive and least cooperative of the Astrals, a god whose nature is storm and rage, who views humanity with indifference that borders on contempt. Waking Leviathan is extraordinarily dangerous, the rite carrying real possibility that the Astral will simply destroy everything nearby rather than grant blessing. The journey to Altisia requires crossing the ocean, which means passage on imperial-controlled ships or finding alternative transportation. They choose a royal vessel that still maintains loyalty to Lucis, the crew risking imperial retaliation by assisting the exiled prince. The voyage takes days, carrying them across waters that deepen from blue to black as the continent recedes behind them. During the voyage, tensions within the group begin to surface. The constant danger and accumulated stress start fracturing the unity that carried them through earlier trials. Gladio grows increasingly frustrated with Noctis's perceived failure to embrace his role as king, challenging him over decisions that seem to prioritize personal feelings over strategic necessity. Their arguments become heated, nearly coming to blows on several occasions before Ignis or Prompto intervene. The conflicts reveal deeper concerns about whether Noctis possesses the strength to fulfill his destiny, whether friendship and loyalty will prove sufficient when fate demands sacrifice that no amount of care can soften. Gladio lost his own father during Insomnia's fall, watched the shield's traditional role fail to protect the king, and channels his grief into demanding that Noctis become worthy of the sacrifices made on his behalf. The anger is not really about Noctis specifically, but about feeling helpless, about being unable to protect those who matter despite all their training and dedication. Ignis mediates as always, attempting to balance competing needs and perspectives, to preserve the group's cohesion when it threatens to fracture under pressure. His role has evolved from advisor to something more like caretaker, anticipating needs and smoothing conflicts before they escalate, ensuring that practical necessities like food and rest do not fall by the wayside during crisis. He carries his own grief and fear, but sublimates them beneath focus on ensuring the others survive, finding purpose in service when direct action remains unavailable. Prompto withdraws somewhat during these conflicts, feeling increasingly out of place among people born to nobility and destiny. His background as commoner becomes more apparent as their quest takes on world historical significance, and he struggles with imposter syndrome that whispers he does not belong, that his presence is charity rather than genuine inclusion. The insecurities manifest as forced cheerfulness and overcompensation, trying too hard to prove his value while secretly fearing eventual rejection. Alticia rises from the ocean like a dream of classical civilization, a city of white stone and graceful bridges where canals replace streets and boats serve as primary transportation. Gondolas glide through waterways between buildings that demonstrate architectural ambition spanning centuries, each structure a testament to artistic vision and engineering skill. The city maintains precarious independence through strategic diplomacy and economic importance, hosting embassies from all major powers while refusing to be absorbed into any empire or alliance. They arrive to find the city preparing for Lunafreya's rite, the oracle's presence drawing massive crowds who come seeking healing and blessing. Her reputation as the people's champion precedes her, stories of miraculous recoveries and demon exorcisms having spread across continents. She represents hope in an age of darkness, the living connection between humanity and divine forces that might save them from extinction. The crowds press close, desperate for her touch, believing that contact alone might cure afflictions or ward off the Star Scourge's corruption. Luna appears exhausted beyond description, barely able to stand under her own power, her attendants supporting her between public appearances where she must project strength and serenity regardless of how close she stands to collapse. The pilgrimage has drained her severely, each covenant accelerating the deterioration that defines an oracle's fate. She burns her life force like candle fuel, illuminating others' paths while consuming herself. And everyone who knows the truth can see that her flame gutter's dangerously low. Noctis finally reunites with her in private quarters, away from the crowds and political machinations, and their conversation carries weight of everything unsaid between them across years of separation. They speak of childhood memories and shared dreams, of futures they imagined before destiny claimed them both for purposes beyond personal happiness. Luna knows she is dying, can feel her life force depleting with each passing day, each ritual conducted, each healing performed. She has accepted this fate, made peace with sacrifice that her role demands, but accepting does not mean the prospect causes no pain. She gives Noctis the ring of the Luci that contains the power of all previous Lucian kings, an artifact so potent that wearing it can grant immense magical capability or kill those unworthy to bear its weight. Regis wore this ring throughout his reign, and it contributed to his premature aging, the accumulated power of ancestral kings draining the life of those who channel their strength. Luna explains that Noctis will need this power for what comes next, for the final confrontation with forces that threaten not just Lucis, but all of Eos. They speak of love in language constrained by duty and destiny, acknowledging feelings that circumstances have prevented them from fully exploring or expressing. The wedding that was supposed to formalize their union will never happen. Both understand this without saying it explicitly, but the emotions remain real regardless of whether they receive official recognition. They care for each other deeply, genuinely, in ways that transcend political arrangement or prophetic necessity. The moment is interrupted by the arrival of imperial forces, Chancellor Arden among them, his presence poisoning what should have been sacred reunion. He speaks with his characteristic mockery, congratulating them on their touching display, while making clear that the Empire will not allow the Leviathan rite to proceed unopposed. Niflheim has tolerated Luna's pilgrimage until now, using her movements to track Noctis and monitor his growing power. But the covenant with the Tide Mother represents a line they will not permit her to cross. Arden delivers an ultimatum wrapped in courtesy. The Empire offers safe passage for Luna if she abandons the rite and returns to Imperial custody, where her healing abilities can be properly utilized treating soldiers and officials rather than wasted on common rabble. Refuse and Imperial forces will level Alticia to prevent the Covenant, killing thousands to eliminate one Oracle and one Prince. The choice, he explains with evident pleasure in their distress, rests entirely with them. Luna's response is immediate and absolute. She will conduct the rite regardless of threats, will wake Leviathan and forge the Covenant, even if it costs her life and destroys the city around her. The Astrals' blessing is essential to Noctis fulfilling his destiny, and her personal survival matters less than ensuring he receives every possible advantage for the battles ahead. She speaks with the certainty of someone who has already accepted death, who views her remaining time as resource to be spent wisely, rather than life to be preserved. The preparation for the rite transforms Alticia into a war zone before the ritual even begins. Imperial forces position around the city, their weapons trained on the plaza where Luna will conduct the ceremony. Resistance fighters emerge from hiding to defend the Oracle. Civilians evacuate toward shelters that might protect them from what follows. The city's government protests the violation of their neutrality, but lacks military force to oppose Niflheim's overwhelming presence. Noctis and his companions position themselves near Luna, determined to protect her during the ritual when she will be vulnerable and unable to defend herself. Ignis coordinates with local defense forces, establishing firing positions and fallback routes. Gladio secures the plaza's perimeter, his massive form and unwavering determination, making him a bulwark against anyone attempting to reach Luna before the rite completes. Prompto photographs everything with shaking hands, documenting what may be their final hours. Luna begins the summoning as storm clouds gather overhead, called by her prayers and the Astrals' awakening fury. She speaks in the ancient language, her voice growing stronger despite her physical weakness, channeling power that transcends her failing body. The water in Alticia's canals begins to surge and swell, responding to Leviathan's stirring, waves rising higher with each passing moment as the Tide Mother wakes from timeless slumber. The Astral rises from the ocean in a spectacle of divine fury, a serpentine form of impossible size whose scales shimmer with colors that hurt to perceive directly. Leviathan is rage given form, storm and tide embodied in a creature whose very existence rewrites the rules governing reality. Her appearance creates waterspouts that tear through the city, waves that overtop buildings, rain that falls with enough force to strip flesh from bone. This is a god who does not care about mortal survival, whose nature is destruction and who views humanity's presence as barely worth acknowledging. The rite requires Luna to maintain connection with Leviathan, even as the astral rampages through Alticia, destroying everything in her path while resisting the covenant being forced upon her. Luna stands in the plaza with water rising around her, speaking words that bind God to mortal purpose, demanding submission from a being that has never submitted to anything. Blood runs from her nose and ears, the strain of containing such power overwhelming her physical form. But she continues because stopping means failure, and failure means Noctis cannot fulfill his destiny. Imperial forces open fire on Leviathan, their weapons ineffective against divine flesh, but drawing the Astrals' attention and fury. Magitech armor deploys throughout the city, their cannons and missiles adding to the chaos, transforming the rite into a three-way battle between Oracle, Empire, and God. Buildings collapse as Leviathan's tail whips through them. Civilians die crushed or drowned, and still Luna continues the ritual because the alternative is worse than any temporary suffering. Noctis fights to reach her, battling through Imperial forces and environmental hazards, using his warp strike ability to cross impossible distances and ascend toward where Luna stands, channeling power that is killing her. He can see her deteriorating in real time, her body consuming itself to fuel the magic necessary to bind Leviathan, and knows that completing the rite will drain whatever life remains. She is dying to give him power, sacrificing herself so he can become strong enough to save everyone else. Ignis covers Noctis's advance, his tactical brilliance keeping Imperial forces disorganized and unable to concentrate their fire. He fights with precision born of years studying every combat form and technique, his daggers finding weak points in Magitech armor, his elemental magic exploiting environmental conditions. But even his skill has limits, and the sheer volume of enemies means that holding them back becomes progressively more difficult as exhaustion sets in and resources deplete. Gladio battles a path through the thickest Imperial concentrations, his greatsword carving through enemies with strength enhanced by fury and desperation. He understands what Luna's sacrifice means, recognizes that she dies for the same reason his father died, to buy time and advantage for the king who must survive to fulfill his purpose. The parallel enrages him even as it reinforces his determination to ensure these sacrifices mean something, that the deaths serve actual purpose, rather than merely adding to tragedy's toll. Prompto provides covering fire from elevated positions, his marksmanship keeping enemies pinned and creating openings for his companions to advance. His fear is palpable, but he fights through it, refusing to let terror paralyze him when his friends need him functional. Each trigger pull, each reloaded magazine, each repositioning to new vantage point becomes an act of will, choosing courage over the flight instinct screaming at him to run and save himself. Luna completes the ritual just as Noctis reaches her, the final words of binding forcing Leviathan to acknowledge the covenant even as the effort kills the oracle who demanded it. Divine power flows from God to Prince, forging connection that will allow Noctis to summon the Tide Mother when need is sufficiently great. But the cost is everything Luna had left, her body collapsing as the magic consuming her finally exhausts its fuel. Noctis catches her as she falls, and for a few heartbeats, they exist in bubble of stillness while chaos continues around them. She looks up at him with eyes that still hold love despite the pain, reaches up to touch his face one final time, and speaks words that he will carry forever. The dialogue is simple because dying people rarely manage eloquent speeches, just an affirmation that she loves him, that she believes in him, that her death serves purpose, and he must not let guilt over her sacrifice prevent him from doing what is necessary. Then she dies in his arms, her final breath escaping in a sigh that seems to carry her spirit away, leaving behind only empty flesh that no longer houses the person he loved. The grief and rage that follows is beyond description, beyond anything Noctis has experienced despite all the loss and tragedy he has already endured. This is different because it is personal in ways that even his father's death was not, because Luna chose him specifically and gave everything so he could continue living. The ring of the Lucy burns on her finger where she wore it as temporary keeper, and Noctis takes it with shaking hands, sliding the artifact onto his own hand despite knowing what wearing it will cost him. The ring immediately begins draining his life force, the power of all previous Lucian kings flowing into him alongside their accumulated suffering and sacrifice. He screams as centuries of pain compress into seconds, as every king's death becomes his own experience, as the weight of the crown reveals itself in full without mercy or restraint. The power is immense and terrible, transforming Noctis into something more and less than human simultaneously. He can feel the old wall, the statues of previous kings that guard Insomnia, waiting for his command to animate and fight. He can channel magic on scales previously impossible, reshape reality through will alone, become the weapon that prophecy demands. But the cost is visible immediately, his appearance aging slightly, dark circles appearing beneath his eyes, the first signs of the deterioration that will accelerate with every use of the ring's power. Ardyn appears during this moment of transformation, materializing from shadows with applause that mocks the tragedy unfolding before him. He congratulates Noctis on receiving Leviathan's blessing and the ring, on becoming one step closer to fulfilling his destiny as the true king. His words carry layered meanings, implications that he knows more about Noctis's fate than he reveals, that everything proceeding exactly as he planned, despite appearances of chaos and improvisation. Noctis attacks him with all the fury and grief boiling inside, warping across the distance between them with sword manifested from rage given form. But Ardyn simply laughs and dances away, evading strikes that should connect, moving with preternatural grace that suggests his physical form is negotiable rather than fixed. He is toying with Noctis, demonstrating casual superiority that makes the prince's enhanced power seem inadequate, proving that whatever Ardyn is, he exists on different level than any opponent Noctis has previously faced. Imperial forces withdraw as suddenly as they arrived, their mission apparently complete despite failing to prevent the Covenant. Ardyn departs with them, his final words promising that they will meet again soon, that the Chancellor has such plans for their next encounter. The cryptic statement hangs in the air like poison as Imperial airships vanish into storm clouds that are finally beginning to dissipate now that Leviathan has returned to her oceanic slumber. The aftermath of the battle leaves Alticia devastated, entire districts destroyed by flood and combat, thousands dead or displaced. The survivors emerge from shelters to find their city transformed into disaster zone, canals filled with rubble, buildings collapsed into waterways, bodies floating amid debris. The Oracle's sacrifice saved the world potentially, but cost this city dearly, and the survivors must reconcile gratitude for divine intervention with grief over everything lost. Ignis suffers catastrophic injury during the final phases of battle, burned by magical fire while protecting Noctis from an attack the prince never saw coming. The damage is severe, leaving him blinded and in excruciating pain, his eyes destroyed beyond any healing magic's ability to restore. The group's advisor and strategist, the one who kept them fed and organized and functioning, is now helpless and dependent, his future uncertain and his role potentially ended. The devastation is complete. Luna dead, Ignis blinded, Alticia destroyed, and Noctis transformed into something that wears his face but carries weight that threatens to crush everything that made him human. The group that departs the city bears little resemblance to the four friends who began this journey, brotherhood strained to breaking by accumulated trauma and loss. The train journey that follows is somber and tense, the four of them traveling in royal carriage that feels like mobile prison. Ignis struggles with his new blindness, refusing assistance even as he fumbles simple tasks, his pride wounded alongside his body. Gladio's frustration boils over repeatedly, blaming Noctis for Luna's death, for Ignis's injury, for every tragedy that followed their departure from Insomnia. The accusations are unfair, but born from grief that needs target, anger seeking outlet in absence of enemies present to fight. Noctis withdraws into himself, barely speaking, the guilt and sorrow rendering him functionally catatonic. He replays Luna's death constantly, imagines scenarios where different choices might have saved her, tortures himself with counterfactuals that change nothing about present reality. The ring on his finger feels like burning shackle, constant reminder of what her sacrifice purchased and what it demands from him in return. Prompto attempts to hold them together through forced optimism and desperate cheerfulness, but even his resilience has limits. He takes photographs obsessively, documenting their journey even when nothing worth documenting occurs, using the camera as shield against emotions too large to confront directly. His pictures from this period show exhausted faces and empty landscapes, visual record of group coming apart at the seams. The train crosses into Niflheim proper, carrying them toward the Empire's industrial heartland, where Gladio, the capital city, rises from polluted wastelands. The landscape visible from the train windows is apocalyptic, forest dead and blackened, rivers running with chemical runoff, the sky perpetually dark with smog and ash. This is what unchecked industrialization produces when environmental concerns are discarded entirely in pursuit of military and economic power. They pass factories producing Magitech armor, see massive complexes where demons are captured and bound into machinery, witness the infrastructure that supports empire built on exploitation of both natural resources and supernatural forces. The scale is overwhelming, revealing just how overmatched Lucis was in any conventional military conflict. Why the kingdom had no choice but to hide behind the wall and hope for diplomatic resolution that was never coming. The train enters tunnel that seems to stretch forever, descending into darkness that feels increasingly unnatural. Prompto grows agitated as they travel deeper, his discomfort evolving into visible distress that his companions cannot understand. He knows something about where they are going, something that he has kept hidden, and the approaching confrontation with that secret terrifies him more than any battle they have faced. Imperial forces ambush them in the tunnel, Magitech troopers attacking in overwhelming numbers that force the group to fight through train cars while maintaining defensive perimeter around the blinded Ignis. The battle is desperate and chaotic, confined spaces limiting maneuverability while enemies press from multiple directions. Noctis fights with mechanical efficiency, his emotions shut down to allow pure combat function, warping between enemies and eliminating threats with brutal effectiveness. During the fighting, Ardyn appears again, his presence transforming structured battle into surreal nightmare. He separates Prompto from the others, corners the young man, and speaks words that the others cannot hear, reveals truths that shatter Prompto's understanding of himself. The Chancellor shows hymn documents, imperial records that prove Prompto is not who he believed himself to be. Not a normal human born in Lucis, but rather a clone created in Niflheim's laboratories, one of countless attempts to mass-produce soldiers enhanced with genetic modifications. The revelation destroys Prompto's sense of identity as thoroughly as Cloud's memories were dismantled in the story that inspired this one. Everything he believed about his origins was false, his existence not natural birth but laboratory creation, his entire life a lie, or at least built on foundations that were never real. He is imperial property that escaped, a failed experiment that somehow achieved consciousness and autonomy that were never intended. Arden offers Prompto a choice wrapped in cruelty. Join the Empire, accept your true nature and purpose, serve the cause for which you were created, or remain with friends who will reject you once they learn the truth, who cannot accept that their companion is manufactured rather than born, who will see only enemy wearing familiar face. The choice is false. Arden has no intention of allowing any outcome except maximum suffering. But Prompto's ability to recognize manipulation is compromised by identity crisis, breaking him apart from inside. The train sequence ends in disaster. Prompto falls from the train, or is pushed, or jumps. The sequence deliberately ambiguous about whether his departure is accidental or intentional. Noctis reaches for him, their hands almost connecting before distance becomes too great, and Prompto vanishes into darkness below. The loss of their friend compounds everything else, another tragedy added to list that already seems too long to bear. The remaining trio arrives in Gladio, the capital of Niflheim, a city of iron and darkness where sunlight never penetrates the perpetual industrial smog. Massive factories operate constantly, their smokestacks pouring pollution into air already thick with particulate matter. Magitech armor patrols streets where civilians move with the defeated posture of people who know resistance is futile. This is dystopia fully realized, the end state of civilizational path that prioritizes power and efficiency over human dignity or environmental sustainability. They infiltrate the capital with assistance from unexpected ally. Aranea Highwind, a mercenary dragoon who works for the Empire but maintains personal code that prevents her from accepting certain contracts, provides intelligence and access that would otherwise be impossible. She has grown disillusioned with Niflheim's methods, particularly their treatment of civilians and their demon experiments, and sees in Noctis's quest possibility for ending regime that has corrupted beyond redemption. The Imperial research facilities are a horror show of scientific ethics abandoned entirely. Laboratories where humans are transformed into demons through forced exposure to the Star Scourge, where soldiers are stripped of humanity and converted into biological components for Magitech weapons. The scientists conduct their work with clinical detachment, documenting suffering without acknowledging the moral dimensions of their actions. They speak of their subjects as experimental units rather than people, numbers and designations replacing names and identities. Deep in the facility, they find Prompto imprisoned in containment cell, restrained like specimen rather than prisoner. He has been subjected to interrogation and experimentation. Imperial researchers fascinated by Clone, who developed independent consciousness, who somehow transcended his programming to become person, rather than remaining tool. The physical abuse is evident, but worse is the psychological damage. The way Prompto refuses to meet their eyes, convinced that his true nature makes him unworthy of their friendship. The reunion is painful and awkward, none of them possessing language adequate to address revelation of Prompto's origins. Gladio attempts to express that it does not matter, that Prompto earned his place through actions rather than birth, that brotherhood transcends biology. Ignis speaks about identity being defined by choices rather than circumstances of creation. Noctis simply embraces his friend, physical contact communicating what words cannot, accepting Prompto without reservation or condition. But Prompto struggles to accept their acceptance, the revelation having damaged his sense of self in ways that external validation cannot immediately repair. He views himself as fraud, imposter, who infiltrated their group under false pretenses, even though his deception was unknowing. The cheerful optimist who photographed their journey has been replaced by someone uncertain and withdrawn, questioning every memory and relationship because the foundation proved unstable. They press deeper into Gralia's forbidden zones, following intelligence about the crystal's location and the true purpose behind its theft. The Empire has been attempting to harness the crystal's power, to channel its divine energy into their magitech weapons and demon experiments, seeking advantage that would make their military supremacy absolute and permanent. But the research has produced unexpected results. Subjects exposed to the crystal's energy dying or transforming in ways that defy prediction or control. In the depths of the research complex, they discover the truth about the Star Scourge's origins and the Empire's role in its current acceleration. The plague is not a natural phenomenon, but rather consequence of ancient war between Astrals and entities that predate them. Conflict that wounded the planet so deeply that infection has festered for millennia. Niflheim's demon experiments and Mako energy extraction are not causing the Star Scourge, but accelerating its spread, taking natural process and amplifying it through industrial-scale exploitation of forces they do not truly understand. They learn about Ifrit, the Astral of Fire, who broke from the other gods and aligned himself with forces opposing both divine and mortal interests. The Infernian was corrupted by the Star Scourge, transformed from protector into destroyer, his divine fire becoming source of plague rather than light. His fall represents how even gods can be broken when exposed to concentrated darkness, how no being exists too powerful to be corrupted if exposed to sufficient malevolence. Emperor Aldercapt himself is revealed as puppet, his body controlled by forces using him as vessel, his autonomy stripped away to serve purposes that care nothing for his empire or ambitions. The man who built Niflheim into superpower has been reduced to marionette, his strings pulled by entities that view mortals as resources to be exploited and discarded. The pathetic figure they encounter bears little resemblance to the shrewd politician who orchestrated decades of conquest, instead appearing as broken shells shambling through motions of authority without possessing any actual power. Arden orchestrated everything: the invasion of Insomnia, the theft of the crystal, the demon experiments, the acceleration of the Star Scourge. All of it traces back to the Imperial Chancellor and agendas that extend far beyond political maneuvering or military conquest. He has been manipulating events for purposes that remain unclear, but obviously involve Noctis specifically, guiding the prince along path toward confrontation that Arden apparently desires, despite ostensibly serving the empire that opposes Lucis. They confront Arden in throne room, where the crystal is being held, suspended in containment field that attempts to regulate its immense power. The Chancellor finally drops his pretense of friendly assistance, reveals himself as enemy who has been toying with them throughout their entire journey. His explanations come in fragments delivered with theatrical flair, enjoying their confusion and growing horror as pieces connect into picture of manipulation, spanning not just their adventure, but centuries of history. Arden Lucis Calum was the first true king, the original heir to Lucis's throne, and the first person chosen by the crystal to banish darkness from the world. 20 centuries ago, when the Star Scourge first emerged, Arden possessed healing abilities similar to Luna's, capable of absorbing the plague from infected individuals and containing it within his own body. He traveled the world performing miracles, curing the afflicted and gradually accumulating massive quantities of the Star Scourge within himself as he saved countless lives. But the price of his mercy was corruption. Absorbing so much darkness transformed Arden, tainting him until the line between healer and plague became indistinguishable. The crystal rejected him, recognizing that he had become too corrupted to serve as vessel for its power, that attempting to channel divine energy through someone so thoroughly infected would spread the Star Scourge rather than eliminate it. Arden's younger brother Somnus was chosen instead, becoming king, while Arden was branded as demon and cast out. The betrayal destroyed him, transformed hero into monster consumed by rage and desire for revenge. He was imprisoned by Somnus and the Astrals, locked away in isolation where his immortal body could not spread further corruption. 2,000 years he waited in darkness, his mind fracturing under the weight of abandonment and injustice, his identity fragmenting until the person who emerged bore only superficial resemblance to the healer who entered captivity. Arden's goal is not conquest or power, but destruction of everything his brother built, complete obliteration of the Lucian bloodline and the prophecy that rejected him. He wants Noctis to suffer as he suffered, wants to destroy the chosen king and prove that the crystal's selection was flawed, that divine judgment is arbitrary and meaningless. Everything he has done, every manipulation and orchestration, serves this purpose of engineering Noctis's suffering before ultimate destruction. The confrontation becomes battle, though Arden is merely playing, demonstrating powers that dwarf anything Noctis can currently access. The Chancellor summons weapons from darkness, mirrors the Prince's armature with corrupted version that draws from Star Scourge rather than crystal, reveals that he possesses every ability Noctis has, plus centuries of experience learning to use them. He is what Noctis would become if the corruption consumed him, living proof that power without purpose leads only to destruction. The battle is unwinnable, Arden too strong and too experienced, but he does not actually attempt to kill them. Instead, he toys with them like cat with mice, demonstrating superiority while explaining his plans. He wants Noctis to reach the crystal, wants the prince to be absorbed into its light and emerge with the full power of the true king. Only then, when Noctis has achieved his full potential, will Arden destroy him. Will the final confrontation occur that proves the prophecy false and renders meaningless all the suffering and sacrifice that brought them to this moment? Arden releases them with the crystal, allows them to escape with the very artifact they came to reclaim, because possession serves his purposes better than denial. The crystal will complete Noctis's transformation, will forge him into a weapon capable of banishing the Star Scourge, and in that moment of triumph Arden will strike, will corrupt the prophecy's fulfillment and ensure that darkness prevails despite everything. Noctis approaches the crystal with full understanding of what it demands. Absorption will complete his destiny but also consume him, will transform him from person into vessel for divine power, potentially destroying everything that makes him Noctis in the process. The prophecy is not salvation but sacrifice, requiring the true king to give everything including identity and autonomy, to become living weapon that purges darkness at the cost of whoever wielded it. His companions try to stop him, recognize that touching the crystal means losing their friend regardless of whether the prophecy succeeds. Ignis speaks of finding another way, of refusing destiny that demands such complete sacrifice. Gladio argues that Noctis has already given enough, that the world cannot demand everything from one person. Prompto simply begs him not to go, not to leave them behind, to stay and let them face whatever comes together. But Noctis understands that refusal means abandoning Luna's sacrifice, means allowing her death to be meaningless, means condemning the world to eternal darkness because he lacked courage to pay the price she already paid. He touches the crystal, feels its power envelop him, and vanishes into light that blinds everyone present. His consciousness is pulled into the crystal's interior space, realm between reality and divine abstraction, where time flows differently than outside. Inside the crystal, Noctis encounters the accumulated spirits of previous Lucian kings, the souls that gave their essence to create the royal arms, and whose power flows through the ring of the Luci. They judge him, test his worthiness to serve as true king, force him to confront doubts and fears that threaten to undermine his resolve. Each trial strips away layers of identity, dissolving attachments and personal desires until only purpose remains, transforming Prince into prophesied savior through process that feels indistinguishable from annihilation. The experience is simultaneously instantaneous and eternal, compressing years of revelation and transformation into moments that exist outside normal temporal flow. When Noctis finally emerges from the crystal, a decade has passed in the outside world, 10 years during which the star scourge spread unchecked and consumed nearly everything, transforming Eos into nightmare realm, where night never ends and demons rule the darkness. The world of ruin is post-apocalyptic hellscape, where human civilization clings to survival in scattered outposts protected by perpetually burning lights that keep demons at bay. The sun has not risen in 10 years, the sky permanently dark, the star scourge having progressed to terminal stage where the planet itself is dying. Crops fail without sunlight. Wildlife has largely been converted to demons. Entire regions lie abandoned as humanity retreats to final bastions that grow smaller and more isolated with each passing year. Noctis wakes on Engelgard, an island prison where he was apparently deposited after emerging from the crystal, his body preserved in stasis while a decade passed. He looks exactly as he did when absorbed, not having aged naturally, but something fundamental has changed in his appearance and demeanor. The man who emerges carries himself with confidence that borders on gravitas, the awkward prince replaced by something approaching kingly bearing, though whether this represents maturation or loss of personality remains ambiguous. He finds the regalia waiting on the mainland, his companions having maintained the car throughout the decade in faith that he would eventually return. The vehicle shows signs of repair and modification. Decades-old luxury car kept functional through constant maintenance despite scarcity of parts and resources. Someone cared for this car the way you care for sacred relic, preserving connection to past and hope for future even when both seemed increasingly remote. The reunion with his companions is emotionally overwhelming. Decade of separation collapsing as they see him standing there unchanged, while they show years of hardship written on faces and bodies. Gladio's beard has grown long and graying, his body carrying scars from countless battles against demons. Ignis has adapted to blindness through use of assistive technologies and heightened remaining senses, moving with confidence despite lack of sight. Prompto looks worn and tired, his enthusiasm dimmed by years of fighting hopeless battles. But his first instinct upon seeing Noctis is to raise his camera and capture the moment. They embrace without words, because language fails to encompass emotion of reunion after 10 years apart, of seeing friend return unchanged from fate that seemed like death. The group that separated in Gladio is finally complete again, though all of them have been transformed by the intervening decade. None of them quite the same people who began this journey so long ago in Insomnia. The world they traverse is barely recognizable. Familiar locations consumed by darkness and demon infestation. Listalum, the largest surviving human settlement, exists under perpetual artificial lights, its power plants working constantly to generate electricity that keeps the darkness at bay. The population has swelled with refugees from collapsed settlements, creating overcrowding and resource scarcity that breeds desperation and conflict. People survive but barely, existing day to day without hope that tomorrow might be better than today. Talcott, who was child when they began their journey, has grown into young man who serves as historian and lawkeeper, preserving knowledge about the world before eternal night. He provides Noctis with updates about the decade he missed, about how the Star Scourge advanced and how humanity retreated, about the countless small tragedies and rare triumphs that define the years of darkness. His accounts paint a picture of civilization in its death throes, fighting with courage and determination despite rational certainty that defeat is inevitable. Iris, Gladio's sister, leads the remnants of the King's Glaive, the special forces that once protected Lucis's royalty, now serving as hunters who venture into darkness to eliminate demon threats before they can overwhelm the surviving settlements. She has become hardened warrior, years of combat having tempered her into someone capable of giving orders that send people to their deaths and accepting that responsibility without flinching. Her greeting of Noctis mixes joy at his return with anger about his 10-year absence, emotions too complex for simple expression. The path forward is clear even if the outcome remains uncertain. Noctis must return to Insomnia, must reclaim his throne in the Citadel, and from there confront Arden in final battle that will determine whether prophecy can be fulfilled or whether the Star Scourge's victory is complete. The journey back to the Crown City is pilgrimage through Tomb of Civilization, passing through regions that were thriving when they last visited, but now lie dead and empty. Hammerhead still operates, Sid having passed away during the decade, but Cindy maintaining the outpost in his memory, keeping lights burning and engines running despite having minimal customers when so few people dare travel anymore. She provides maintenance for the regalia, repairs accumulated damage, and upgrades systems to handle the deteriorated road conditions that define the world of ruin. Her greeting of Noctis is warm but tinged with the weariness that affects everyone who has survived the decade of darkness. The exhaustion of fighting endless battles with no victories, only delays of inevitable defeat. The approach to Insomnia reveals the Crown City's transformation into demon stronghold. The streets that once bustled with life now prowling grounds for monsters beyond counting. The wall fell when Regis died, and nothing has prevented the Star Scourge from consuming every corner of the city, transforming it into concentrated epicenter of darkness. The Citadel still stands at the city's heart, its architecture intact, but its lights extinguished, a monument waiting for its king to return and reclaim what was stolen. The group camps one final time before entering Insomnia, their last night together before the confrontation that will determine everything. The conversation around the campfire is subdued, each of them aware that tomorrow likely means death, regardless of whether they succeed or fail, that fulfilling the prophecy requires sacrifices none of them wish to contemplate. They speak of memories, of the journey that brought them here, of everything gained and lost along the way. Prompto shows them photographs from their travels, decade-old images of younger versions of themselves captured in moments before tragedy taught them the cost of their quest. The pictures show them laughing and relaxed, eating Ignis's cooking, posing with ridiculous catches from fishing expeditions, sleeping in awkward positions during long car rides. These frozen moments of normalcy and joy stand in sharp contrast to the grim warriors they have become, visual evidence of how much the journey has taken from them. Ignis prepares one final meal, his cooking having evolved during the decade to accommodate his blindness, producing dishes through muscle memory and heightened senses of smell and touch. The meal is simple but perfect, comfort food that tastes like home and memory, like everything they have been fighting to preserve. They eat slowly, savoring flavors and each other's company, unwilling to let the moment end, even as Dawn's absence means time has become difficult to measure. Noctis thanks them, attempts to express gratitude for everything they have done, all the ways they have supported and protected him, even when he did not deserve such loyalty. The words are inadequate, but his companions understand what he struggles to articulate, accept the sentiment even as they reject the implication that their service required repayment. They are brothers, and brothers do not keep accounts, do not measure sacrifice against reward, simply stand together because the alternative is unthinkable. Gladio speaks of his father, of the shield's duty, and the pride he feels in having protected Noctis, even when that protection meant challenging and criticizing him. His journey began with frustration about the prince's perceived weakness, but he has watched Noctis grow into someone worthy of the title king, someone who bears responsibility without flinching even when the weight threatens to crush him. Whatever happens tomorrow, Gladio knows his father would be proud, would recognize that the shield's legacy continues through him. Ignis talks about purpose and meaning, about how advising Noctis gave structure and direction to his life, even when that service demanded everything. His blindness could have ended his usefulness, could have reduced him to burden requiring care rather than companion providing support, but he refused that diminishment, adapted and continued serving because service itself matters more than the specific forms it takes. He has no regrets, would choose the same path if given the opportunity to live his life again. Prompto struggles to express feelings that overwhelm his ability to articulate, finally settling on simple truth that knowing Noctis and being part of this journey represents the best thing that ever happened to him. He was nobody, clone without purpose or place, until Noctis befriended him and gave him belonging that transformed existence from burden into gift. Whatever his origins, whoever or whatever he was designed to be, he chose to be their friend, and that choice matters more than any genetic programming or laboratory designation. They ask Noctis about what happens after, about what comes next if the prophecy is fulfilled and the light returns. He cannot answer because he does not know, because the prophecy speaks only of banishing darkness and restoring dawn, but remains silent about the true king's fate once that purpose is achieved. The silence suggests outcomes he refuses to contemplate, implications that his companions understand without requiring explicit statement. This may be farewell, final night together before the ending that separates them permanently. The assault on Insomnia begins at what would be dawn if the sun still rose. Though in eternal night, the distinction is purely symbolic. They drive the regalia through city streets choked with demons. The car's weapons upgraded with Magitech technology salvaged from imperial wrecks, cutting through enemies that throw themselves at the vehicle. The journey to the citadel is gauntlet, running battle through districts where every corner conceals fresh horrors, where buildings collapse and streets rupture as the Star Scourge's corruption physically reshapes the environment. Imperial forces remain active in Insomnia. Magitech troopers still following orders despite the Empire's collapse and Arden's obvious madness. They fight alongside demons, or perhaps the distinction has blurred. Soldiers who have been corrupted beyond humanity, but retain enough conditioning to continue serving purposes they can no longer consciously understand. The combat is brutal and exhausting. Waves of enemies that seem inexhaustible, but the group fights with coordination perfected through years of battle, each covering the other's weaknesses, creating opportunities through combination attacks that multiply their individual effectiveness. They reach the Citadel's base and ascend through its interior, climbing through halls where Noctis once walked as prince, chambers where his father held court and made decisions affecting millions. The building is simultaneously familiar and utterly transformed, architecture intact but atmosphere perverted, sacred spaces defiled by demon presence. Memories assault Noctis with every room he enters. Visions of childhood and innocence overlaying current reality of corruption and decay. Arden waits in the throne room, seated on the chair that should belong to Noctis. Mockery evident in every detail of his posture and expression. He congratulates them on reaching this point, applauds their perseverance in the face of overwhelming opposition. The Chancellor has been waiting 10 years for this confrontation, anticipating the moment when he can finally crush Noctis at the height of his power, when destroying the true king will deal maximum damage to the hope that prophecy represents. The final battle begins not with speeches or negotiations, but with immediate violence, Arden unleashing the full scope of his corrupted abilities. He summons demons as extensions of his will, manifestations of the Star Scourge made flesh and given purpose. His armature mirrors Noctis's but draws from darkness rather than light, weapons that corrupt rather than cleanse, attacks that inflict spiritual damage alongside physical harm. He moves between dimensions, phases through space like Ghost, exists partially outside reality in ways that make landing solid hits nearly impossible. Noctis fights with everything he gained from the crystal, channeling the power of all previous Lucian kings, wielding the ring of the Luci to call forth magic that reshapes the battlefield. He summons the royal arms simultaneously, creates storms of blades that attack from every angle, warps continuously to maintain pressure despite Arden's defensive abilities. The throne room becomes demolition zone, walls cracking and floor fragmenting under forces being exchanged. Architecture never designed to contain combat at this level of power. His companions support as best they can, though the battle has escalated beyond scales where normal mortals can meaningfully contribute. Gladio's strength and Prompto's marksmanship and Ignis's tactical brilliance matter less when combatants move faster than eyes can track and exchange attacks that could level buildings. But they refuse to withdraw, continue fighting at the edges of the conflict, providing distractions and creating openings even when their contributions seem negligible compared to the titanic forces clashing. Arden reveals his true form, drops the pretense of humanity to manifest as Demon King, corruption made flesh and given crown. He is what happens when the Star Scourge completely subsumes identity, when the person is dissolved entirely into the plague, leaving only malevolence wearing familiar face. The transformation is horrifying and pathetic simultaneously. Monster who was once hero, villain who should have been savior, tragedy and threat intertwined until separating them becomes impossible. The battle moves beyond the physical throne room into metaphysical space, combatants fighting across layers of reality simultaneously. They clash in the memories of Insomnia as it was before the fall, in visions of futures that might have been if different choices were made, in abstract spaces where symbolism replaces geography. Noctis sees Luna standing beside him in some of these visions, her spirit present in ways that transcend death, offering strength and comfort even though she cannot materially affect the combat's outcome. He sees his father as well, Regis standing proud and whole without the pain and deterioration that marked his final years, offering approval and acceptance that Noctis has spent his entire life seeking. The vision speaks of being worthy, of having grown into the man and king that circumstances demanded, of honoring all the sacrifices made on his behalf through choices that justify the faith others placed in him. The confrontation reaches its climax not through superior force, but through acceptance. Noctis understands finally what the prophecy actually demands, what banishing the darkness truly requires. The true king must absorb the Star Scourge into himself, just as Arden did millennia ago, must take the accumulated corruption of the entire world and contain it, accepting damnation to purchase salvation for everyone else. The difference is that Noctis possesses the crystal's blessing where Arden was rejected, divine power to contain and purge what would otherwise consume him. But the purging requires fuel, requires life force to power the cleansing, and the amount of corruption accumulated over 20 centuries demands everything Noctis has, and more besides. He must sacrifice not just his mortal life but his very soul, must pour himself completely into the act of purification, burning away the darkness and himself simultaneously until nothing remains except the cleansed world. Arden understands this truth and laughs with genuine mirth that borders on hysteria. The prophecy is revealed as cruel joke, demanding from Noctis the same sacrifice that destroyed Arden, proving that divine judgment cares nothing for justice or fairness, that the crystal simply uses whoever is available and discards them once their purpose is served. Noctis will die alone in darkness just as Arden did, will know the same betrayal and abandonment, will understand too late that heroism and villainy are arbitrary labels applied after the fact. But Noctis rejects this interpretation, refuses to accept that his fate mirrors Arden's despite surface similarities. The difference is choice and purpose, acceptance rather than resentment, love rather than hate. He chooses this sacrifice willingly, understanding its cost, and accepting the price because the alternative is worse. Luna chose the same, as did his father, as did countless others who recognized that some things matter more than personal survival. The kings of Lucis manifest around them, the spirits of every monarch who wore the crown and bore its burden, emerging from the ring of the Lutii to assist their heir in the final confrontation. They are not saviors or rescuers, but rather witnesses and supporters, their accumulated power flowing into Noctis to give him strength sufficient for the task ahead. Each king offers their essence freely, adding to the pyre that will fuel the purification, sharing the sacrifice rather than allowing it to fall on Noctis alone. Arden is defeated not through destruction, but through purification, the corruption sustaining him burned away by divine fire channeled through Noctis and the accumulated power of the Lucian bloodline. The demon king dissolves, his accumulated hatred and suffering finally released, 2,000 years of torment ending in something that might be peace or might simply be oblivion. His final expression is ambiguous, could be rage or relief, fury at defeat or gratitude for ending. With Arden gone, Noctis ascends to the throne, sits in the chair that has waited decades for its rightful occupant, and prepares to fulfill the prophecy's final requirement. His companions try to reach him but find themselves unable to approach, held back by invisible barriers, or perhaps by Noctis's own will, keeping them distant to spare them the pain of witnessing what comes next. They can only watch as he raises the weapons of his ancestors, as divine light begins to gather around him. Noctis's final act is not spectacular display of power, but quiet acceptance, letting the crystal's energy flow through him unrestricted, channeling the accumulated force of divine judgment into the world. The light spreads from the citadel outward in waves that consume darkness wherever they touch, burning away the star scourge from infected creatures and land, purifying corruption that has festered for millennia. Demons dissolve back into the people or animals they were before infection, or simply cease existing if the plague had fully consumed their original nature. The price is visible immediately. Noctis's body crystallizing as the energy drains his life force, transforming him into monument or perhaps battery, vessel that contains and directs power, but ceases being person in any meaningful sense. He feels himself dissolving, consciousness fragmenting as death claims him. But his final thoughts are not of fear or regret, but of gratitude and love, thankfulness for the companions who stood beside him, and love for everyone he fought to protect. His last vision, before awareness ends entirely, is of dawn breaking over Insomnia, the sun rising for the first time in 10 years, light spilling across the city and spreading to the world beyond. The eternal night is ending, the star scourge being purged, and life is getting a chance to begin again. He sees his companions standing in that light, sees their tears and grief, but also their survival, knows that his sacrifice achieved its purpose, even if he cannot remain to witness the world he saved. The throne room falls silent as the light fades, Noctis's crystallized form remaining seated on the throne, like statue commemorating what was lost. His companions collapse in grief, the emotional weight of watching him die, overwhelming their ability to remain standing. They knew this might be the cost, suspected the prophecy demanded ultimate sacrifice, but intellectual understanding does nothing to soften the pain of actual loss, of watching their friend give everything and being powerless to prevent it. Gladio weeps openly, his warrior stoicism finally breaking under the weight of this final loss. He protected Noctis's body, but could not save his life, fulfilled the shield's duty, only to have it result in the king's death anyway. The failure is not his fault. He understands this intellectually. But guilt does not require rational justification to inflict pain. Ignis removes his glasses and wipes his blind eyes, tears flowing despite his inability to see, his body expressing grief that transcends visual stimulus. He advised and guided and cared for Noctis throughout their journey, but all his wisdom and planning could not prevent this ending, could not find alternative that saved both their friend and the world. Prompto takes one final photograph, capturing Noctis's crystallized form seated on the throne. His cameras flash, illuminating the scene. The image will serve as record of what was lost, proof that someone gave everything so others could continue living, documentation of heroism and sacrifice that should never be forgotten. They emerge from the citadel into dawn light, the first natural sunrise in a decade, warming their faces and illuminating a city that is slowly being reclaimed from corruption. The demons are gone, dissolved by the purification, leaving empty streets and damaged buildings, but no active threats. Survivors emerge from shelters, blinking in unaccustomed sunlight, hardly daring to believe that the nightmare has finally ended. The world begins the slow process of rebuilding, survivors emerging from hiding to reclaim territories abandoned during the eternal night. Crops can be planted again, now that sunlight has returned. Animals that survived in protected enclaves can be released to repopulate wilderness. Communities can reconnect and begin reconstructing the civilization that nearly collapsed. The damage is immense, and recovery will take generations. But recovery is possible where it was not before. Future exists where previously there was only countdown to extinction. Gladio, Ignis, and Prompto serve as witnesses to what happened, ensuring that Noctis's sacrifice is remembered and honored, rather than forgotten or distorted by time and political convenience. They tell the story of four friends who set out on what was supposed to be a simple road trip to a wedding, of how that journey transformed into odyssey that saved the world, of the prince who became king and gave everything so that life could continue. Lunafreya appears to Noctis in the afterlife, her spirit waiting for him beyond the veil, and they finally share the wedding that circumstances prevented them from having in life. The scene is tender and bittersweet, union achieved only through death, happiness purchased with tragedy. They speak vows that no one living will hear, exchange promises that exist outside time and mortal consequence, claim the love that was always theirs, but which duty never allowed them to fully embrace. The final image shows them together, seated on a throne in some space beyond life, watching over the world they saved. Noctis and Luna, king and oracle, two souls whose sacrifices are intertwined, finding peace in each other after deaths spent serving everyone else. The image suggests that their story continues somehow beyond mortality, that death was not ending but transformation. But the ambiguity allows for multiple interpretations depending on viewers' beliefs about what comes after. The world of Eos continues without them. The eternal night ended and the star scourge purged, but the scars remain. Insomnia will take decades to rebuild. Entire species went extinct during the decade of darkness. Cultures and communities were lost that cannot be restored. The cost was staggering even in victory, reminding survivors that triumph over existential threats does not mean return to comfortable status quo, but rather opportunity to build something new from the wreckage. The remaining Astrals withdraw further from mortal affairs, their covenants with humanity fulfilled, or perhaps exhausted, returning to their elemental slumbers and leaving the world to be shaped by human choices without divine intervention. The age of gods actively involving themselves in mortal destiny is ending, replaced by era where humanity must navigate its own future without supernatural guidance or interference. The empire of Niflheim collapses entirely in the aftermath, its infrastructure destroyed and its leadership dead or discredited. The territories it conquered begin reclaiming independence, establishing new governments or restoring old ones, creating political landscape far more diverse and complex than the binary opposition between Lucis and Empire that defined the previous age. The resulting chaos creates both opportunity and danger, freedom and uncertainty intertwined. The story of Final Fantasy XV is ultimately about sacrifice and what it means to be king. Noctis's journey from reluctant prince to willing sacrifice charts transformation from someone who wanted to avoid his destiny to someone who embraced it fully, understanding its cost. The game repeatedly emphasizes that kingship is not privilege but burden, not power to command but responsibility to serve, not about what you gain but about what you must give up. The brotherhood between the four companions provides emotional core that makes the larger stakes meaningful. We care about saving the world because we care about these specific people and their relationships, because watching them support each other through tragedy and triumph creates investment in their continued survival. When Noctis ultimately dies to save everyone, the pain is personal rather than abstract, because we have spent so many hours with him and his friends. have witnessed their bond deepen through shared adversity. The game's troubled development history is well documented, with significant portions of planned content being cut or modified before release. But the emotional beats that remain create coherent narrative about loss and duty. The story's willingness to kill its protagonist permanently, to deny players the happy ending where everyone survives, demonstrates commitment to thematic integrity over commercial calculation. This is a tragedy dressed in fantasy trappings, a story where victory requires ultimate sacrifice and where love proves insufficient to prevent death. The themes of predestination versus choice run throughout, with Noctis seemingly locked into prophetic role, while actually choosing to accept that destiny rather than having it forced upon him. The prophecy creates path and pressure, but does not eliminate agency, does not reduce him to puppet acting out predetermined script. His choice to embrace the sacrifice rather than seeking escape or alternative makes his heroism genuine rather than merely fulfilling cosmic programming. The environmental themes about balance and sustainability, while less prominent than in some Final Fantasy entries, still resonate through the Star Scourge's depiction as planetary infection, world dying from accumulated corruption that mortals accelerated through their exploitation and conflicts. The Eternal Night serves as ultimate environmental catastrophe, extinction-level event, where the damage has progressed beyond any partial fixes, requiring total reset purchase through sacrifice. The treatment of mortality and what persists after death provides comfort without being dishonest about loss. Luna and Noctis reunite in afterlife, suggesting that death is not absolute ending and that love transcends mortality, but their companions still grieve and the living still suffer their absence. The dead do not return to fix problems for the living. Instead, the world must continue without them, must build its future using the foundation their sacrifices created. The game's ending, showing the four friends camping beneath stars, followed by the wedding scene between Noctis and Luna in the afterlife, provides emotional resolution that is both devastating and satisfying. We mourn what was lost while celebrating what was achieved. Honor the dead while acknowledging the living must continue. Find meaning in sacrifice without pretending it was anything less than tragic. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of gaming's most emotionally complex stories, consider leaving a like and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more comprehensive explorations of the RPGs that have defined gaming history, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future episodes. Until next time, may your journeys be memorable and your sacrifices meaningful.